Buenos dias, Gunners Collective TV. Back at it? You already know. Like a torta with some bad habits. Bye up, bye up. Let's get straight up to this intro. Welcome back to the channel. And if you haven't already hit that like and subscribe button, make sure you go ahead and do that. Put your notification bell on all so that way you're directing the direction of the dope content that the gun stays kicking. And I appreciate your support, man. So, Operation Dead Horse. Wow. Thursday, the FBI, they unsealed documents, man. And they went after the 18th Street gang, right? They pretty much dismantled what they believe to be the alleged leadership of the 18th Street gang on Thursday. I'm going to read you an article right here, and then we're going to get into it. And I'm going to explain to you guys my perspective and how I already knew that, man, they're just coming after everybody. Right now, in this day and age, these operations just keep on going. Every month, it seems to be a new operation, one after the next, after the next. They just did an operation in Salinas, California, where they got, one gang off the streets, or they figured they did, Does this actually stop a gang from thriving? It definitely puts a thorn in their side. It definitely stops the momentum of what they got going on. But at the same time, man, it does devastate a lot of families, a lot of people. And there are a lot of people cheering in the streets. A lot of people are happy that certain gangs are dismantled. Now, that we all know the 18th Street gang is one of the biggest gangs in the world, if not the biggest gang in the world, with over 100,000 members all over the world. Okay. I myself been locked up pretty much the majority of my life. And I can tell you, I've never been to a facility, a prison, a county jail, anywhere where there wasn't at least one member of the 18th Street gang. Now, having known growing up with a mother that actually was from 18th Street, that's how deep it gets for me, right? So let me read this article and then we'll break it down. On Thursday, the FBI announced the arrest of 12 alleged 18th Street gang members and associates, right? And the unsealing of federal indictments tied to activity at MacArthur Park in Los Angeles Westlake District. Federal authorities allege the gang members work with a certain cartel. I'm not going to get into all that, right? Authorities said 18th Street is the largest street gang in Los Angeles, California, and is responsible for drug trafficking in parts of the city known as MacArthur Park and Skid Row, as well as in Hollywood and the San Fernando Valley. Let me grab this. A total of 7 federal grand jury indictments were returned in the case. That's a lot, right? The main indictment charges 7 Los Angeles-based members and associates with racketeering and conspiracy, the RICO Act. U.S. Attorney Bill Easley said that last year, President Donald Trump issued a directive to pursue the elimination of cartels and transnational criminal organizations, what they consider street gangs, right? The U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi later ordered the dismantling of transnational criminal groups, meaning street gangs, any organizations that they feel are terrorizing the streets. These are who they're focusing on. This is who they're definitely coming after. And you would think with this war in Iran or whatever, these bombings in Iran and all this shit going on, that they wouldn't have the time to focus on street gangs and criminal activities within the United States, but they most definitely do. I'm telling you guys right now, the RICOs, the indictments, the focusing on gangs, it's never going to stop. It continues. They have certain elements of the feds that are actually working 24/7 to dismantle gangs within the United States. The FBI then launched what is called Operation Dead Horse. That's what this operation is called. They always utilize a name for the operation, like Operation Red Right Hand, Operation Valley Star, Operation Night Shock, Operation Scrapbook, Operation Dead Horse, right? Which led to the arrest of 12 defendants. Six others remain at large, including one believed to be in Mexico and another in Guatemala. They will be found. They will be arrested, says the district attorney. The defendants are charged with racketeering and drug trafficking in what the district attorney described as one of the most violent gangs in the Western Hemisphere. Prosecutors allege the gang also engaged in extortion and illegal gambling operations known as casitas, assault, and murder. Now, of course, these are all alleged charges, but I think we pretty much know, man, that being one of the most biggest, largest, and most well-known gangs in Los Angeles and throughout the world, man, you could pretty much say they had their hand allegedly in a little bit of everything. Authorities said the gang's activities extend beyond Los Angeles city limits. The group is believed to have, what did I say, 100,000 members in the United States and a presence in Mexico, Central and South America, also throughout the world. I mean, these guys are everywhere. 18th Street, like I said, is one of the most known and has been one of the biggest gangs in the world when it comes to the raza. And I don't know how long. And what makes them unique and different from others is they not only embrace the raza, but they bring a little bit of everything. Doesn't matter your ethnicity. If you're worthy of their cause, if you're down, you're in 18, man. If you are a real one, right? Or what they consider a real one. And that's how most gangs operate, man. If you grew up in that area, no matter what color you are, no matter what your religion is, if your dedication and your loyalty is to that gang, that barrio, let's go. We're going to skip over that. Among those charged is Kiko Marie Gonzalez, right? A female, also known as Moms. And we're not going to focus too much on her, but let's just say that she was described as the second in command of the 18th Street Gang, a female. And I've noticed that trend a lot. You know, a lot of females are put into a leadership position. They are an extension of their old man or an extension of someone else who's high ranking in the gang. And it's because the focus is never on a female. People are not tripping on that female that's going to work, that looks like she's just operating at a normal level. But in the meantime, in between time, she's actually calling the shots or organizing what's going on. Moms is also known as La Señora or La Reina, meaning the queen or the lady, right? Whom prosecutors described as the gang's second in command and street boss. Authorities allege that from at least July 2020 through March 2026, she oversaw criminal activity, collected extortion payments, and communicated directly with the incarcerated co-conspirators. Now, again, man, everything is alleged. You know, whatever information they've received or whatever information they have on her, of course, she'll get her due process in court. But as of right now, she's incarcerated in the Los Angeles County Jail. And, you know, that's a fucked up feeling to one day be the prominent figure, the most respected figure in a gang or in a group, and then you lose your grip on power. Just like that. Feds come knocking at your door and all that goes away. All that money, all that power, everything is gone. Prosecutors allege that on July 27, 2022, Gonzalez ordered the killing of a woman identified in court documents as MZ. Later, she failed to pay, after she failed to pay extortion payments tied to a drug trafficking in gang control territory. George Carrillo, 60, and Carlos Beltran, 48, are charged with murder and aid of racketeering in connection with the shooting. So they already got the guys who they figure did the shooting, were involved, and they tied together all these pieces. See, that's what happens once a murder occurs or something and it draws the attention of the feds. They utilize that to tie in together all these different pieces of the gang and take down everybody. Believe the arrest will not stop until they feel that they got everyone that they need to get off the streets. If convicted, Carrillo and Beltran face mandatory life sentences. Mandatory. Not maybe, Tory. Mandatory. Gonzalez faces up to life in federal prison, while other defendants face potential sentences ranging from 20 years to life. During Thursday's briefing, Robert Molvar, acting assistant director to the Federal Bureau of Investigation's Los Angeles field office, said 18th Street originated in the 1960s and later expanded into the western parts of Los Angeles. Molvar said Operation Dead Horse began in January 2023. So this is 2026. For 3 years, they've been focusing on this federal indictment. For 3 years, they've been watching the gang's activities, probably using undercovers, of course, using confidential informants, things of that nature to gather the intelligence that they needed to get a concrete slam dunk case. And that's usually what happens when the feds come knocking. It's done. You get to rocking. It's crazy. The FBI worked with the Los Angeles Police Department and other federal agencies to investigate the gang's operations. So their day-to-day operations, they watched from the sidelines for a while. During the briefings, the district attorney said different gangs control different sections of MacArthur Park and that 18th Street is responsible for the northern portion of the park. He described the area as plagued by drugs and homelessness, alleging that the gang used tents to conceal drug trafficking activities and avoid law enforcement detention. So basically, they're saying they set up all these little tents, making it look like they were homeless and they were trafficking up out of those tents. I guess we'll see once the indictments are unsealed and they go to court exactly what type of evidence they have. Now, you notice, and I'm going to tell you guys some real, because I've had friends that were caught up in indictments. Not all these charges stick to everybody, man. They gather as many people as they can from the gang or as many people as they can from the group, hoping that someone will flip and that they can make something stick. Their focus is mainly on the people who they figure are basically running the gang in the group. That's usually their focus. They don't care about all the other little individuals that are associated, but they're hoping that they can get someone to flip. That's why they arrest so many people. While serving search warrants Thursday, authorities said they seized approximately $80,000 in cash, 10 pounds of fentanyl, 5 pounds of meth, and 6 firearms over the course of the investigation. Officials said that more than 175 pounds of meth and fentanyl were recovered. Now, let me explain to you. That's a large amount of drugs, but that's really nothing in comparison to a lot of other RICOs that I've seen where they've gotten tons. Okay, but that still is an extensive amount of drugs taken off the streets or took off the streets. What can I say? 18th Street has always been, a gang of folklore, one of the deepest gangs, a gang that was derived in the 60s and is actually an offshoot from another gang known as Clanton 14th Street. If you know the history of 18, then you know, I could tell you some funny stories about 18, and I could tell you some real stories. I could tell you that while incarcerated as a youngster, the 18th Street gang was always represented well on every different compa, every different building, every different facility and yard. But I also can tell you that 18th Street was one of the first gangs that I remember going against the grain. Meaning that prior to the Fresno Bulldogs breaking away from the Northerners and starting to do their own thing and function as a unit by themselves, 18th Street actually did the same thing for a minute. They actually decided that they were big enough to go on their own, and because they had so many members that they weren't going to function with Sur Gang, that they were going to do their own thing. Now, that didn't last very long. They got pulled right back into the fold, and they started functioning as Southerners again. But I can remember and recall about 92 or 93, there was an 18th Streeter named Babyface from Southside 18, man, who actually came to the Northerners and was like, look, we just want to let you guys know we're not functioning with Southerners anymore. We're just 18, and it is what it is. We're not involved with any of the shenanigans you got going on with them. Now, that didn't last but about 6 months, and the next thing you know, the 18 was pulled back into the fold. And don't get it twisted. That wasn't everyone. It seemed like a coup. One little group of guys who decided that they were going to do what they wanted to do and run their own program. And like I said, it didn't last too long. Okay. I'm going to tell you guys another story, how thick the 18th Street gang is and how I know. There was this guy. I was incarcerated out of state, and I was in Ad Seg. I was in the hole. I got into a fight. I was doing 6 months in the hole, and there was 2 Southerners there in that pod, right? They were actually pretty cool, man. Kind of OG dudes. They would, converse on the tier. Everybody got along in this pod because that's all we had. We were all doing time together. That's it, right? And they would show respect. If someone hit for canteen, we'd make sure that everyone on that compa that was worthy ate. None of the J-Cats or weirdos ate on our account, but, it didn't matter if you were north or south. Everybody ate. That's just a raza thing. We want our enemies at their toughest and their strongest, man, and we will feed our enemies, right? And even more so than that, it's just, you don't want to eat in front of someone who's struggling. That's just how it was. And so we had good rapport. It was 3 Northerners, and it happened to be, for the first time, we outnumbered the Southerners. There was 2 Southerners. There was just good rapport. There was never no disrespect. We made sure that without even saying it, that was the way it was. So there was no disrespect on the tier, bumping baking soda breath, none of that. Well, this youngster comes in, bald, devil horns, all tatted back, and I just know he's a Southerner. You could tell. Sur Gang, you could tell by the writing on his walls, right? And he walks in, and of course, one of the Southerners hits him up. Hey, where you from, Esse? About this, like, I'm from 18, Esse Shadow Park. He's like, all right. Now, Shadow Park is a clica. One of the cliques of 18th Street is a very well-known in Los Angeles clique of 18th Street, which is actually pronounced Chateau Park, right? Not shadow, like the shadow, but Chateau. But this man said Shadow Park, and the way he said it with the D, I was pretty much aware that either he was from Shadow Park and that's just the way he talked, or he wasn't and was claiming something that he wasn't really from. Now, just because I said he wasn't really from, meaning he had never been to that area, didn't mean he dedicated and loyal to that 18th Street gang. So immediately he gets in there and starts saying Buster this and Buster that and disrespecting Northerners. Now, of course, he gets checked immediately by the Southerners that are there. They're saying, hey, we don't do that, homie. That's disrespectful. We let them Vatos do them. We do us. We keep it respectful. And he's down with that. He's down. He slips a couple times, but he's down with that, right? We end up becoming real cool. And cool enough where we could have conversations on the tier. And I remember his name was 666, right? That's what he called himself, 666. 666 being a symbolization for the 18th Street gang. 3 6s, right? Which is 18. And so we're chopping it up. And I'm like, where you from, bro? You know what I'm saying? You from LA or what? He's like, nah, I'm from over here, bro. But, you know, I mean, my hood, my barrio's from there, which I understand. And there's a lot of Jews that claim 18 all over the world, but have never been to LA. It's just what it is, right? So that's normal. So I'm like, what clica? You know, what section? Because there's West 18, South Side 18, East Side 18. They're everywhere, right? And he's like, oh, I'm from the East Side Shadow Park. I said, spell that shit. And he said, SHADOW. And I said, if you don't stop it. I said, and then I break it down how Chateau Park is spelled differently, right? With T's. And I remember he was all fucking butthurt and Navato was all fuck, right? I've been spelling it like this the whole time. And I get it. But the thing is, that's not the big story. It was funny. We laughed about it. And then he just did his thing. The thing was, he was very dedicated to 18. He was very in the mix with 18. He was willing to give his life, right? And for a gang that he's not even been to this where it actually was established, but that's how deep their tentacles are in their reaches, that they're all over the world at this point. And like I said, I pretty much them and MS are the deepest, as well as the Latin Kings, Folks Nation, all them. You got different Latino, different raza gangs that are the deepest in the world. And I could sit here and get into an argument with someone over who's the deepest, but why argue over who was a deeper gang? Like that's going to change the rhythm of the night, right? It's not. I know that the focus on 18 is very surprising that it took this long for law enforcement to actually go after them, because you would think that they would focus on the bigger gangs first and then hit the smaller gangs. But it seems like the feds have their own agenda and do what they do. You know, this is definitely a crazy situation. Now, as far as a woman being charged and being considered the second in command of a Los Angeles street gang as big as 18, like I said, it didn't blow my top off either. I wasn't surprised. You know, throughout the history of gangbanging, while I was in the mix, we utilized women all the time in different forms of fashion, whether it was to come visit us, whether it was to facilitate a home for the homeboys on the run to go chill at, whether it was to move one thing to another place, right? Whether it was to hold weaponry or whatever. Women were always utilized within gangs because a lot of women play with emotion. They're very emotional. And when they're with a man, they become whatever that man's from. You know, you're not going to be with a gang member and you know his whole ins and outs. There's a lot of pillow talk that goes on. A lot of these women, and some of them are just regular women, but they start to become a part or an associate of that gang into the deepest dark depths of that gang, because they know more than just a regular average gang member would know, because they're with someone who's in position of leadership. So that in proxy makes them kind of in a position of leadership because they know more than just the average gang member. So for them to get this lady known as Moms, I'm pretty sure she's known in the area. Now, remember, again, I'm not throwing her under the bus or disrespecting 18 at all. That's their business. This is just what is put out there in the media. And I'm just repeating and regurgitating what I see in the media. I don't know this woman at all. But like I said, it doesn't shock or surprise me that a woman would be considered in this position of power, because I know a lot of chicks that were. Case in point, one time I'm at a party chilling, right? Gang of Norteños there. And we get to talking about prison. We get to talking about politics. We get to talking and reminiscing about who's harder and who's tougher. And everyone's trying to show that they know a little bit about a lot of bit. And everyone's trying to play that tough role. And there was a female there. She was actually a white chick. And her old man was somebody. He was a big homie, right? I didn't know this at the time. And her charisma and the way she carried herself, I could tell that she was laced up, educated. And come to find out, she was giving everybody the game. Like she was really in the mix, even more than myself and everyone there. When I found out who her old man was and exactly who was lacing her up and educating her, I felt two types of emotions. One, I felt shame that I wasn't up to par like her and that none of us were. And two, I felt like the big homie at that time was pillow talking too much and giving her too much of the game. A woman should not be in position of the type of knowledge that she was in position of, right? But it was, who am I to speak on it, man? Women are just like men. They're equal in all things. And I believe that this lady known as Moms, because of her position and because of what they allegedly have on her, she's going to get the same amount of time a man would get. And that's very unfortunate. You know, I don't know if she has children. I'm sure she has family. And it's unfortunate. But when you involve yourself in gangs and things like that, this is what happens. So to clean all this up, man, the 18th Street Gang got a RICO put on them. They're one of many that I'm sure will be coming next, man. And that's just what it is. With Trump in office, man, and him focusing on terrorism and focusing on these organizations, best believe you guys better have your boots laced up because they're coming, man. They're really coming. Thumbs up or thumbs down. Heavy's going to be the head that wears the crown. I'm going to continue to strive, struggle, and strive for what I truly believe in. That's the betterment of all people. You got to watch your back, especially if you're out there in the mix. This video is sponsored by Vadio Liquors out there in Turlock, California. If you're ever in the area of Turlock, go pull up to the Vadio and get you something cold to drink and go support the homie Lolly. Also, by Sticks and Stones Yard Service out there in AZ, man. Google the homeboy, look up his number. If he's in your direct area, he's guaranteed to come over and take care of that for you, man. Support the raza. Support local small businesses. This is the gun. Bang, bang.